History Overview, Chapter 4 and 14 by Rakiba, Brianna, Lisa, and Sanaya. Table of Contents. Chapter 4, Important People/Events. A few important people and events during the Byzantine and medieval era. Chapter 4, Medieval Society. Religion, economic, and social life in the time period. Chapter 14, The Ming and Traditions. Important people and events, practices, ideas under the Ming Dynasty. Chapter 14, Qing Dynasty and Unification of Japan. Important events, people, and practices. Chapter 4, Eastern and Western Europe in the early medieval period. Images: Charlemagne and Justinian. Important people. Justinian, the most important of the early Byzantine emperors. A bit of background information and origin. He was born in a peasant family in Macedonia. An important and notable thing is the project on the church, Hagia Sophia, Holy Wisdom. In addition, he issued a law called the Body of the Civil Law and had efforts to reconquer the Western Roman Empire. Patriarchs. Powerful officials of Constantinople. Pope Gregory I, responsible for charting an independent course for the Roman Church, also was a theologian. Saint Basil and Saint Benedict. They are two of the most important reformers, one of Caesarius in Byzantium and the other of Nursia in Italy. Both prepared regulations for monasteries that provided mild asceticism. Odoacer, a Germanic general who deposed the last of the Western Roman emperors. Yet he did not claim the imperial title for himself. Louis the Pious. This is Charlemagne's only surviving son and succeeded his father. He ended up losing control of local authorities, and when it was handed over to his sons, they disputed the inheritance and split the empire into three. Eventually, the Carolingian Empire dissolved. Charlemagne. Under Charles Martel's grandson, Charlemagne rule, the Frankish realm reached its highest point. Building the Carolingian Empire was his biggest achievement. During his reign, he built a court and capital at Aachen, modern Germany. He relied on aristocratic deputies, counts, and instituted missi domici, envoys of the Lord Ruler, to keep them under control. In the year 800 only was finally when Charlemagne accepted the emperor title, and Pope Leo III crowned him. Important events. Theme system. An important administrative and military innovation introduced by Byzantine rulers. Allowed Byzantine influence to expand in the 9th and 12th centuries. Viking invasions. Raided many cities like Constantinople 3 times using their ships and strategies. Sought commercial opportunities and lands to cultivate and settle down. A large process of expanding the territories by Nordic peoples of Scandinavia. Byzantine conquest. Justinian sought to conquer the Western Roman Empire, re-established Roman authority throughout the Mediterranean basin. Under General Belisarius, Byzantine obtained control over Italy, Sicily, most of northwest Africa, and southern Spain. Muslim conquest. Expansion of Islam occurred after the death of Muhammad. In the 17th century, Arab warriors began to conquer the Sasanian Empire in Persia, some of the Byzantine Empire, and the lands of Byzantine Syria, North Africa, Egypt, and Palestine. However, Byzantine used a weapon called Greek fire to defend themselves.
Moving on to medieval society. Religion. Christianity was a major religion in the Byzantine Empire in Constantinople, where Charlemagne was crowned as emperor by Pope Leo III in the year 800. Iconoclasm was inaugurated by Emperor Leo III because he believed that adoration of images or icons of God were sinful. Iconoclasm means breaking of icons. Leo III ended up embarking this policy to destroy religious images and prohibit them in church. Social. Byzantium was a very urbanized community, and the heart of the city was the imperial palace, which was surrounded by luxury. Constantinople held 4,388 mansions and 14 imperial palaces. However, women had to live separately and couldn't have any male visitors outside of their household. The city had relaxation sites, public baths, and the famous hippodrome, where various fields of entertainment took place. The feudal system was introduced, and it consisted of a hierarchy of lords and vassals who were in charge of political and military affairs. Economic. Constantinople was a manufacturing megalopolis that held artisans and craftsworkers. Silk textile became a major contribution to Byzantine after it was introduced, due to Christian monks from Persia smuggling silkworm eggs from China to Byzantium. Constantinople was also a main clearinghouse for trade in Western Eurasia, But when they started struggling economically, they created new innovations like heavy plows to boost their agriculture.
We're here to raise your land!
Chapter 14: Tradition and Change in East Asia.
Important people. Hong Wu was the founder of the Ming Dynasty. During his rule between 1368 and 1398, he drove the Mongols out of China and created a tightly centralized state. As emperor, Hong Wu highly utilized people to be part of the government. These were mandarins, who were imperial officers that traveled and saw implementation of government policies, and eunuchs, who were men with high government and or military jobs. Yongle was the third emperor of the Ming Dynasty. He reigned from 1403 to 1424 and launched a series of naval expeditions through the Indian Ocean basin to display Chinese colors as far as East Africa. The successors of Yongle disconnected the maritime expeditions that he had placed, but still maintained the tight centralized state that Hong Wu had created. In 1421, Yongle moved the capital from Nanjing to Beijing in order to prevent new invasions and to keep watch over Mongols, but it did not work. Zheng He was an admirable Chinese mariner, explorer, and admiral during the early Ming Dynasty who traveled as far as East Africa. The Great Wall and Ming decline. The Great Wall of China was built because of precautions later Ming emperors took wanting to protect their realm. The wall was built along the northern border. It was a project under the Ming Dynasty with hundreds of thousands of workers creating a stone and brick wall that would run 1,550 miles long and 33 to 49 feet high. Roughly 500,000 workers died while the project was undergo. The Ming Dynasty declined for multiple reasons. Some were because navy and coastal defenses kept proving ineffective, pirates operated in their territorial areas, governments were unable to organize factors, and peasants were starving. Although these did contribute to the fall and decline, the main reason was the invasion of the Manchus. Manchu forces invaded from the north in hopes to expand their land in China. In 1644, the Manchu Chinese rebel forces captured the capital in Beijing. Footbinding and marriage. Footbinding originated in the Song dynasty but became popular in the late Ming and Qing dynasties. Small feet were considered attractive for women. Families would bind the feet of young girls with strips of linen to create a smaller foot. This condition of their feet stunted the growth and could not support the weight of an adult woman because the girls would be stepping on their broken toes squeezed under their foot. Foot binding became very popular among the wealthy because it represented an ability to support women who could not physically perform. It was also used within commoners to attract marriage. Marriage itself was purposefully used to continue the male line of descendants. On the wedding day, the bride would arrive to the husband's house and perform rituals to demonstrate her service to her husband and her new family. Women could not divorce men, but men could divorce women when there was no offspring, guilty of adultery, theft, disobedience, and sometimes even being too talkative. Population growth and technology. Epidemic diseases such as the plague claimed millions of lives. China's population grew from 100 million in 1500 to 160 million in 1600. The population declined because of rebellions and wars, but surged to 225 million by 1750. The demographic growth caused social and economic issues because it could not agriculturally keep up with the population. During the times of the Song and Tang dynasties, China was the world's technologically advanced leader when they produced floods of inventions. Although, in the times of the Ming Dynasty, they adopted European firearms and naval inventions for their own use that had originated in China but got renewed and worked better. The Ming and Qing dynasties favored political, and social stability over technological advances, which they believed would cause unsettling change. Crops and trade. The Chinese cultivated every piece of land they could to increase their yields of traditional foods and crops, especially rice, wheat, and millet, until the 17th century. Spanish merchants from the Philippines introduced American food crops to China. Trade brought great prosperity to China. Chinese workers produced silk, porcelain, and tea for customers across the Indian Ocean, including Europe and Central Asia. Government policies and limitations of foreign trade made it nearly impossible to conduct trading networks. The silk and porcelain were traded for American silver. Chinese merchants were prominent in the Philippines, but trade was global with visitors from places such as the Netherlands.
The Qing Dynasty, cultural influences, and unification of Japan. The Manchus. After the Ming fell due to the Manchus, they started migrating there from their homeland Manchuria, located north of the Great Wall. They claimed the new dynasty, namely the Qing Dynasty, changing Chinese history. The Manchus were pastoral nomads, and their remote ancestors traded everywhere within China and occasionally clashed with their neighbors. During the late 16th century and early 17th centuries, a chieftain named Nurihachi unified Manchu tribes and expelled Ming garrisons in Manchuria. He captured Korea and Mongolia and launched invasions into China. Because of him, they were able to capture Beijing and extend further into China. Despite ruling a new dynasty, the Qing, they were careful to preserve their ethnic and cultural identity by doing things like outlawing intermarriage between Manchus and Chinese, and also forbade Chinese from traveling to Manchuria and learning their language. Important people of the Qing dynasty. Emperor Kangxi. Kangxi was a Confucian scholar and enlightened ruler. He enjoyed reading and composing poems. He studied Confucian classics and applied them to his policies. Kangxi was also a conqueror, and he took over areas like the island of Taiwan and tried to force off nomadic people by influencing them with Chinese views. Most of his conquests reached all the way out to the Caspian Sea, and he overall greatly helped the Qing dynasty when it came to conquering land. Emperor Qilong. Qilong is the grandson and successor of Kangxi, reigning and taking over the dynasty after Kangxi fell. Qilong was depicted as a sophisticated and smart man, benefiting the dynasty greatly. He enjoyed poems and reportedly composed more than 100,000 poems and was very interested in painting and calligraphy. During his reign, the dynasty was so prosperous that taxes were removed on 4 occasions. Toward the end of his reign, he paid less attention to imperial affairs, and his successors continued his practices. Even after his reign, China still remained well-organized and wealthy. The Confucian tradition and Chinese cultural influences. Confucian education. Ming and Qing emperors wanted to support Confucian education, so they funded programs and academies such as Holland Academy in Beijing. The emperors also funded projects emphasizing Chinese cultural traditions and collected a vast amount of Chinese philosophical, literary, and historical texts. Popular culture and novels. Novels were highly enjoyed by urban residents in China and were frowned upon by Confucian scholars for being crude fiction. Though many novels offered reflections on the world of human affairs, a few example novels are The Romance of the Three Kingdoms, The Dream of the Red Chamber, and Journey to the West. The return of Christianity to China. Matteo Ricci. Jesuits were the most prominent missionaries who wanted to strengthen the Roman Catholic Christianity in Europe. Matteo Ricci was the founder of the mission to China, wanting to convert them to Christianity, starting with the Ming Emperor Wan Li. Matteo studied the Chinese language and Confucian classics. Jesuits used European science and gadgets to impress their hosts, helping the Chinese correct their calendars and gave them maps of the world and lent high-quality weaponry to the Ming and Qing armies. Confucianism and Christianity. Jesuits used European technology to sway Chinese citizens to convert to Christianity. They portrayed Christianity to be very similar to their own cultural traditions and beliefs. Matteo wrote a book titled The True Meaning of the Lord of Heaven. arguing that Confucius and Jesus were similar. By the mid-18th century, there were about 200,000 Chinese Christians out of 225 million. The reason why the number of converts is so small is because they hesitated to adopt a new religion since they honored Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism for centuries. Unification of Japan. Japan was brought together and unified in the early 1600s by a powerful leader named Tokugawa Ieyasu. After winning a big battle, he became ruler or shogun and started a government that lasted over 250 years. To keep the country peaceful and prevent the local lords, called daimyo, from starting fights, he made them spend every other year in a capital and leave their families there when they went home, so they wouldn't rebel. He also cut off most contact with other countries to stop foreign influence, especially from Christian missionaries, and only allowed a little bit of trade with few places. During this time, Japan's population grew, cities got bigger, and people mostly lived in the strict social order where everyone had a set rule. The government used a way of thinking called Neo-Confucianism to teach people to respect authority, follow rules, and stay in their place in society. This helped keep things calm and organized for a long time. Unification of Japan continued. After Japan was unified by Tokugawa Ieyasu in the early 1600s, the country entered a period of peace and order under the Tokugawa shogun. To keep things stable, the government tightly controlled religion and foreign influence. Christianity, which had been spreading through missionaries, was seen as a threat to the shogun's power, so it was banned. The Christians were persecuted. At the time, the government allowed limited contact with the Dutch, who didn't try to spread religion. Through this, Japanese scholars studied Western ideas, specifically science and medicine. This was called Dutch learning. While the government focused on control, every day people found ways to enjoy life. In cities like Edo and Osaka, entertainment districts called floating worlds became popular, where people enjoyed theater, music, art, and other pleasures. The cultural and intellectual changes all happened while Japan stayed mostly closed off from the outside world under a strict but peaceful rule.